In recent weeks, leaks have begun to appear in the technology industry that were initially perceived as just another set of rumors. But now more and more analysts and insiders agree that a serious strategic step is indeed being prepared inside Apple, capable of changing the entire lineup of the company's personal devices. According to sources, including Bloomberg and Reuters, Apple is actively working on a new category of devices that will develop in parallel with the classic iPhone lineup, including the future iPhone 18. It is not about replacing the smartphone, but about creating a separate direction that in the future may become the next stage after the iPhone. Inside the company, this project is described as a transition from a device in the hand to a technology that exists around the user. Insiders claim that Apple is increasingly focusing on the idea of an invisible interface. This means that the familiar screen is gradually ceasing to be the center of interaction. Instead, the company is developing solutions where information appears directly in the space in front of the user. According to analysts from TF International Securities, Apple is already testing prototypes of devices that do not have the classic smartphone form factor. They may be significantly thinner, lighter, and visually less noticeable. The main idea is that the user stops perceiving the device as a separate object. At the same time, Apple is not rushing to abandon the iPhone. On the contrary, the iPhone 18 is considered as an intermediate stage that will continue the evolution of the current lineup. But in parallel, the company is preparing something that may completely change the rules of the game in the future. Sources note that inside Apple, the project is supervised at the highest level. This is connected with the fact that the company understands that the smartphone market has reached a stage of saturation. Further growth is possible only through radical innovations, and that is exactly why Apple is looking for ways to go beyond the usual device. One of the key directions is the integration of next-generation artificial intelligence. According to insider information, Apple is developing a system that will be able to adapt the interface in real time. This means that the device will not simply display information, but will shape it for a specific user and current context. At the same time, great attention is paid to interaction without physical contact. Gestures, voice, gaze, all of this becomes the foundation of the new interface. Analysts note that Apple is inspired by the development of spatial computing. After the release of headsets and experiments with augmented reality, the company has begun to actively invest in technologies that allow the interface to be moved beyond the limits of the screen. This direction may become the basis of a new line of devices. According to Bloomberg, Apple is considering the possibility of creating a compact device that will work as a central module, while the entire interface will be projected in the space around the user. This may look like a holographic interface, although in reality, it is about a more complex combination of technologies. It is important to note that Apple traditionally does not rush to bring such products to market. The company prefers to refine the technology to a perfect state. That is why the project may remain in development for several more years. However, the very fact of its existence is already influencing the industry. Competitors are closely watching Apple's actions. If the company really presents a new line of devices, this may trigger a new wave of technological competition. At the same time, Apple is betting not on the wow effect for the sake of marketing, but on deep integration into the user's everyday life. The device must become so convenient and invisible that a person stops thinking about its existence. That is exactly the philosophy of the project. According to insiders, inside Apple, the idea is increasingly being voiced that the future of technology is not new devices, but the disappearance of the devices themselves as a separate category. And if this strategy proves successful, then in the coming years, we may witness the beginning of a transition to a new era where the iPhone becomes just one stage in evolution, and in its place appears something far more integrated, invisible, and technologically advanced, fundamentally changing the way humans interact with the digital world. As this information continues to spread among analysts and investors, it is becoming increasingly clear that this is not a one-off experiment, but a long-term strategy. Inside Apple, this project is seen as a foundation for the next decade, and according to sources close to the supply chain, the company has already begun early negotiations with manufacturers of new types of components capable of enabling ultra-thin designs, flexible power elements, and projection systems that can operate under various lighting conditions. At the same time, as noted by journalists at Bloomberg, special attention is being paid to energy efficiency, since one of the main challenges of such devices is maintaining complex visual interfaces without significantly increasing power consumption. It is precisely here that Apple is trying to achieve a breakthrough by leveraging its own developments in chip design and software optimization. In parallel, according to Reuters, the company is actively testing usage scenarios in which the device fully replaces the smartphone in everyday life, including communication, navigation, work, and content consumption. The key objective is to make this transition as seamless as possible so that the user does not feel any loss of functionality, but instead gains a more natural and convenient way of interacting with the digital world. Sources also note that Apple is considering several possible form factors, including compact wearable devices, minimalistic modules, and even solutions that can be integrated into clothing or accessories. This indicates that the company is not limited to a single concept, but is searching for the optimal balance between technology and user experience, which fully aligns with its philosophy. In addition, analysts at TF International Securities emphasize that Apple is actively investing in the development of sensors and motion tracking systems, since interaction without a screen requires high precision in recognizing gestures, gaze, and the user's position in space. These technologies may become critical to the success of the new product line. At the same time, it is important to understand that the company is acting with extreme caution, avoiding premature announcements and leaks, which makes the emerging information especially valuable to the market, as each detail helps clarify the direction of development. If all available data is combined, it becomes clear that Apple is preparing not just to introduce a new product, but to change the very paradigm of how technology is used. Within the industry, a scenario is already being discussed in which the new line of devices will initially coexist alongside the iPhone, gradually expanding its capabilities and audience, and then, as the technology matures, begin to replace traditional smartphones. This process may take several years, but its beginning could be much closer than many expect, especially given the current pace of development in artificial intelligence and spatial interfaces. In this context, Apple's project appears to be a logical continuation of the company's entire evolution, from iPod and iPhone to its modern experiments with augmented reality. If the company succeeds in realizing its vision, in the near future, we may see a world in which devices cease to be physical objects and instead become part of the surrounding space. According to analysts, this is exactly what Apple is striving toward as it prepares to take one of the most important steps in its history.